Next up is our final AI inspirational conversation of the day, the reimagination of everything. Our expert panelists will share how AI is breaking down traditional development approaches and how intelligence-first design is reshaping the way we think about everything. To guide us through this look into the design crystal ball, please welcome Ganesh Bell, Nenshad Bardoliwalla, Jonathan Frankel, and Johnny Ho.
The content's written, the work is done without overloading anyone. Rule-based automation, saving time. No more endless grind. No more boxes checked, endless tasks. No longer lost or stuck in the past.
Hello, everyone. Hello. All right. We've got a great panel, and I'm going to get started with all of you on others. Johnny, a lot of people say things have marched very fast in the last few years, yet progress in breakthrough technology in AI has been, it's taken several decades. But there's a lot of incremental technologies that have come up that all add to something meaningful. So help us, based on where you are, the companies you are, what's really hype, what's actually real, and what's good enough to build on top of? Anyone of you?
Well, I mean, at Perplexity, we're really focused on one problem, right? So we're focused on knowledge distillation and search. So in that sense, the progress has been tremendous, right? Previously, you had very small models that were not really capable of summarizing large amounts of text, right? But now with the incremental changes, like even the end user can perceive the quality and difference from before and after, right? So even though the kind of the incremental progress has been, you could say slow, like the end impact is huge.
Yeah, I would say that it's like any technology. I think people are very prone to extremes. They see an advance and they will fit a scaling law to that and look and try to extrapolate orders of magnitude beyond wherever they are today. Unfortunately, that's not usually how science works. But we've seen a lot of progress in AI, and this technology is incredible and really interesting and incredibly difficult to use and incredibly unreliable. And it can be both. But it's, I look at it as almost just a new kind of compute. Instead of having in yesteryear, we would have programs that were deterministic. You could write the code, you knew what you were getting, but they were limited because you had to write the code. We have now compute that is fuzzy. It can solve fuzzy problems, but it also is fuzzy and unreliable. And I don't know how intrinsic that is to the technology. People are claiming that we're on the road to AGI or claiming that we're on the road to superintelligence. It's hard to predict the future. And just that one advance from kind of having this fuzzy computing that has gotten a little bit better, it's already made a huge difference. You're seeing applications like Perplexity that were not possible a few years ago. But you're also seeing a lot of people promise things that I don't think are possible with this technology today and won't be for a long time to come. And the answer is somewhere in between. VCs love to get us into the hype. Certain executives love to get us into the hype. It's great for valuations today. It'll be really rough for valuations tomorrow if we overpromise and underdeliver. And so the real focus should be on what can we usefully do with the technology as it stands today, and hope that it continues advancing, and hope that all of its problems magically get solved. But that's not how technology tends to work in my experience.
Nenshad, same.
Yeah, so based on what I've seen at Google, I look at 3 patterns of use cases where companies can be successful today. And I do think that what my fellow co-panelists have described is largely consistent with my views. The first, I'd say, is around communication, right? So I think of communication, creation, and coding. Those are the 3 use cases, primordial use cases, where generative AI technology can be really useful. So for communication, I think the 2 areas that are really useful are around synthesis, so being able to extract large amounts of information from text, and I'd say now infamous chatbot, where everybody's getting a new generation of chatbots on their website. But we have seen very good empirical indications that this generation of chatbots, we've had chatbots for, to Jonathan's point, we've had chatbots for many years, but these are quite a bit better. They understand us a lot better. and we're able to communicate with them a lot more naturally. I think the second is around creation. And these are, to me, some of the most exciting use cases. So at Google and also in the open source world, you will see examples of being able to create really stellar images, right? Being able to create video content. We have a product that has gone viral in the last couple of months called Notebook LM, which is taking content and turning it into a podcast with two very natural speakers, and it's really cool. Then the third example, Ganesh, I think where people are seeing a lot of benefit is around coding, right? And there we see, companies, some of whom were mentioned earlier today, like Replit, where they are able to provide a significant advantage in terms of the productivity of people coding. So we definitely see clear benefits in those three categories, but to the points expressed earlier, it is not easy. It is not just snap your fingers. There's a lot of work involved to make those solutions useful.
So Johnny, why did you decide now was the greatest time to go reimagine search? It is also one of the hardest problems, especially in go-to-market as well. But what did you see as a possibility on why this was a good time to go reimagine search?
Yeah, so especially towards the last point, right? So, being able to code with a small team is now easier than ever before, right? You don't need as many third-party tools. You can just kind of generate a lot of things in between the stack that you may have had to pay for before or hire like an entire team to do before. And that was the biggest instigator, right? So you wouldn't be able to, for example, at the beginning of Perplexity, tackle as big of a problem as search, right? So initially, maybe you could ask questions about your data, or you could do like a very small vertical search. But now with the advent of AI, you can do like a more broad horizontal search and then build into that instead of starting at very smallly scoped problems, right?
Jonathan, first, congrats on the Mosaic acquisition into Databricks. Was it last year, or it felt like 2 years?
Don't make me that old. It's only been a year.
It's only been a year, but you already brought a lot of change. So Databricks has been around for quite some time. People have been moving to building great applications on top of Databricks. But with the advent of Mosaic and Mo, what are you seeing customers do now on top of the combined data intelligence platform that was not possible a few years ago, but is possible now?
I think we're seeing that gradual incremental progress toward kind of integrating intelligence into people's applications. I think, I wish I could tell you that it's changed everything and all of our customers have, gone 10 years into the future and that's, we end up with panels called the reimagination of everything, which is, not to point fingers at anyone who chose that name, but that's a lot of hype. And I think the reality is progress is going to be incremental. Mm-hmm. People are going to make progress. A year ago, the statement was that Gen AI had created like 10,000 POCs and 2 things in production. And this year, it's 10,000 POCs and now 500 things in production. Like, we're making progress. I think on the Databricks side, the thing that's most interesting to me is, honestly, it's Perplexity from a different lens. How do you interact with your data in a natural way? There's one kind of doing that, which is, search over the web and search over all information publicly available. There's another version of that, which is search over all of your enterprise data. Enterprise data meaning everything you've got in a SQL table, every scrap of information you've uploaded to Databricks over the years. This could be 70-year-old schematics of jet engines in one case that I saw. How do you find that information and extract something useful out of that, and especially do it in natural language in a way where you don't have to go and write Spark? As much as I love Spark and I love writing Scala, it would be really nice if I could just write it in text. And those products exist today, and they have huge uptake. So to me, it's that incremental battle that we're going to be fighting over the next decade plus. Mm-hmm. To take a technology that's really interesting and may never meet the hopes and dreams of certain people who are claiming we'll have super intelligence in mere thousands of days or whatever it is, and instead is just going to be fundamentally useful in the same way that the internet did not mean that borders of countries melted away and we all transcended our meat space into cyberspace. But it did transform the world in a lot of ways that took decades to manifest, but are the world of what I'm told 1992 was like is very different than the world of today. And I expect the same will be true with AI, but it's going to take time and it's going to be incremental. And that's the expectation I'm setting with all of our customers because they're enterprises, they're realistic. They need to get return on investment, not just to hype things up today.
So Nenshad, you've been a builder through several decades of shift in computing. We've seen this narrative. I think if Anshu is around, he coined the term stack fallacy of people in one layer misunderstand the layer or overestimate or underestimate the layer above, where you can go back to the 90s and Oracle thought everything was a database problem and there was just databases and that's it. And apps could run inside the database, Java could run inside the database, but then there was a whole host of middleware companies that came out and then you built on top of it, right? There are similar views that are being shared on foundation models will do pretty much everything, and there are just apps on top of foundation models. But we heard Andrew talk about the fact that there is at least a layer of innovation that comes on top. What are the kind of things that you're seeing as, especially you build on GCP, Google, on your models?
Sure. So we tend to break it down into 3 layers, just for making it easier for us to reason about. One is we have taken a very open approach to model selection. So yes, we provide state-of-the-art models in Gemini and Imagine, but you can also take advantage of Llama, you can take advantage of Anthropic. So we try to provide a very open ecosystem for people to get the innovation they want from any provider that they want to work with. But the second layer is really important, which we've termed within Google the model builder. And this is about the tooling that allows you to, when we talk about the machine learning lifecycle, we think of experimentation and then operationalization. And on the experimentation side, in GenAI, it's about prompt management and evaluating your models and tuning your models and distilling your models and ultimately winnowing a model down to the right level of quality, latency, and overall performance and cost that you're interested in. And we are not at the point where you can just do this automatically. You do need tooling that will allow you to say, okay, at this cost structure, for this amount of latency, I need this level of quality for text summarization in order for this use case to be useful for me. And you need a collection of tools for that. And then similarly, you also need tools for putting these models or systems that chain multiple models together into production. And so these are capabilities like prediction endpoints and model monitoring tools, pipelining capabilities, et cetera. So I think the fallacy in the industry is that you can be a developer and you can write some prompts and you can get stuff back from the model and we're done. I'm Gen AI certified now. And that is absolutely not the case for real production applications. There is still a significant amount of prompt engineering, evaluation, tuning, and then sort of deployment, model monitoring, et cetera. That is truly the new stack that needs to be understood, and I would argue also needs to be integrated with the application development stack, the data stacks, et cetera, in order to all work together to build new classes of applications.
So Johnny, when in your own journey of building Perplexity, because you were definitely one of the earliest to go build a new application based on the stack, if you will. What are the things that you've learned? What are the things, early mistakes that you had to make that you probably can share with entrepreneurs and enterprises here? Mm-hmm. And what have you learned?
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot. I think we built almost all that stack without knowing that stack was going to be the case for everyone, right? So, we had problems with reliability, you had problems with evaluation, you had problems with managing your prompts. So we ended up building quite a few in-house versions of all of this, right? Which today may or may not be correct, but at least we have that muscle memory of how to do it, right? And in the process, we've just learned so much, right? So we've learned, which model is the right one to use for which use case, depending on latency, cost, all of these requirements. And we expect the industry to continue to evolve.
And what are some of the, this year, everybody gets to talk about agents as the next breakthrough.
But so much with the hype language. Yeah. The next breakthrough?
Yeah.
Come on.
breakthroughs happen, what, 20 years in AI every year?
I mean,
Every
you know,
2 days.
it's let's be realistic here. That everybody's talking about agents today, and everybody was talking about AGI last year, and we'll see what they talk about. It's entirely possible that agents are very exciting, and we start to deploy them. But delegating authority to an AI system to make decisions in the world that's a lot of trust you're putting in this technology today. I mean, it took Waymo what $30 billion to get cars driving in one city in the world with a lot of care, and you should put a lot of care into these applications. It's not to say they did a bad job. It's just it's hard to deploy things in the world that you delegate decision-making authority to. So, breakthrough, next big thing, let's be realistic here.
So what are the things that you see?
No, I mean, I think the word agent is overused, right? But a lot of things in our day-to-day workflow are already agentic, right? So there's steps visible that the AI is taking. And again, you can't really trust the AI right now to just go off on its own and do like a whole, end-to-end workflow, right? You have to observe it. You have to make your own decisions in between to intervene if it goes off the rails. And I think that's not going away, at least within this current set of technology.
So, Johnny, going back to what is, if we leave aside the pursuit of AGI, superintelligence, all of these hypey things, and say you can actually incorporate good enough machine learning and data science into applications, what are some of the interesting things? It may be boring problems, but real value problems that people are building on top of Databricks.
Boring problems are the most exciting problems.
Yeah.
The boring problems run the world.
How many people are working on boring problems here?
I'm definitely working on boring problems. It's great.
Wonderful.
Boring problems are what affect people's lives and make the world go round. The sexy problems are, they're fun, but boring problems are, I don't want to insult you. Search is a boring problem in the sense that you just want information.
Yeah.
You don't want search to be sexy. You just want to get the information. The answer is honestly, exactly what was said before. It is, we're seeing a ton of communication tasks. We're seeing what I would consider open-ended tasks, brainstorming tasks, so there's no right answer. The way I typically frame it to my customers is it's tasks where it would be relatively expensive for a human to solve the problem, and either you don't need to be right, there are many ways to be right or many ways to be helpful, or it's very easy for a human to check whether the answer was correct. So, GitHub Copilot is the classic example, and it's a great one because it's solving the problem in very bite-sized pieces. There's human intervention at every single stage, and it is faster for a human to check than a human to type. And all you've got to do is hit tab or not hit tab. That's a beautiful application. The idea of transcribing doctor's notes and potentially giving a diff to a patient's file and just having a doctor read that over, doctor's time is really valuable. And if that means they can spend more time with the patient and less filling out forms, that's boring in an incredible way that's great for the world. But then asking an LLM to go and summarize a legal document that's very complicated and where the details matter, you sure as hell better hope that LLM is perfect. And you sure as hell better not take it at its word. The human's going to have to go back and basically do the whole task over again to verify that the details were right. That is not a great task for LLMs today.
So, Nenshad, you've seen a lot of people build what everybody would call as good copilots, and copilots in tasks, not works. What are some of the best examples you've seen? Obviously, NotebookLM is a fantastic example of exploration of UI, but what are some of the interesting things that you've seen people build?
So I think I want to piggyback on something that was said earlier. I think the notion of, I think of autonomous agents versus augmenting agents, right? I think autonomous agents, there are many areas of my life that I'm not ready to have autonomous agents for yet, okay? So I do completely agree with the point that the idea that we're going to delegate decision-making authority in any of the significant domains in our life today, based on the current state of technology, is very unlikely. I think that, whereas I think there's actually a lot of value in the augmentation type tasks, right? For example, having an agent that can write three versions of an article for financial analysts and have it revised 3 times, and then have a human, scan the 3 and be like, this one actually sounds like this is the most authoritative. It sounds like the tone of my organization, et cetera. That's actually really useful, right? But again, I really believe in at this state of the technology, the augmentative approach, because I think that there are challenges with the technology today. And I would bring sort of the area where I see the industry needing to go. So those of you who have tracked this industry for a long time, or who have been in AI for many years, there has been a constant struggle between sort of neural-based approaches and symbolic-based approaches, right? Rules versus learned behavior, but you may not know exactly what the distilled rules are from that learned behavior. And I think for agent-like technology to be useful, we have to combine those worlds together. There are decisions where I don't want the model to make a choice. If it's illegal for me to discriminate my credit score based on certain attributes, I don't want the model to have an opportunity to hallucinate. I want to code that and use that logic, which is, by the way, what we've done for the last 50 years. But in other areas of the workflow or business process that we're working on, I actually benefit from the innovation that I can get from a large model that isn't confined by the strictures that maybe a person would be. So I think that what you're going to see as an industry, I do think agents have a lot of promise in the augmentation case, but you're going to see more and more of the classical rules-based approaches fuse with these LLM and other less deterministic approaches in order for us to be able to do things in a way that people find valuable.
Okay. In the morning, we started off with Ali and talking about how most people make the easier leap to actually reimagine their offering or product with augmenting it with AI, but don't really think about all the people part, the process part. Like, if you were to reflect your own companies, like how much do you actually use AI internally? What percentage of regular work does AI augment or use? Or how much have you incorporated AI into your real work?
Yeah, so probably as a startup, we probably use it the most out of all of the traditional companies. I think as a startup, you have to be able to create without using actual humans. It's like if you have a hard problem that you need 10 ideas for, you can't just go around asking 10 different people to combine all their ideas, right? You need the AI to generate 10, and then you need to, as a human, use your taste to pick the top one, right? And in the process, you may have broken some traditional things. You may have stepped out of your comfort zone, or you may have used the AI to kind of replace what would have been traditionally another hire, right? So in the process, you may make small missteps, but as a whole, your velocity is 10x faster or 20x faster, which works at least in a startup environment.
Yeah, I think we use it everywhere we humanly can, the same as our customers do. We're constrained by the same challenges as any enterprise, that you have to be thoughtful about where you use this. And we're the custodians of all of our users' data, 12,000 enterprises, and we need to treat that very carefully. And so that does mean putting some care in. But at the same time, we use it everywhere we possibly can. Copilot. I've never learned how to use Spark because the Databricks assistant basically does that for me at this point. And it's okay for me to get up on stage as a representative of Databricks and say, still don't really know how to use Spark and still don't really know Scala, because our tooling and our products make it possible for me to get by without that. That's really exciting. So yeah, we're using it as much as we possibly can with the same caution that I think any big enterprise should take in diving headfirst into a new technology and being good custodians of their users' data.
Yeah, so I'll go back to communication, creation, and coding. So Sundar Pichai, our CEO, mentioned on a recent earnings call that a significant portion of the code that is being created at the company is facilitated or assisted by AI. I think we've embedded AI capabilities in Google Docs, in our Google Sheets, our presentation software, and where I personally find it useful, I get, as I'm sure many of you do, hundreds of emails a day and hundreds of chats a day. It's impossible to keep up. So having things like automatic summarization capabilities. Lately, we as people are identifying action items, they automatically show up on my calendar so that I know how to take action again. Maybe boring problems, as you would put it, but boy, they really help make things a lot easier. So we are trying to apply it in as many different areas as we can. And so far, the results are promising.
So we talked about a lot of incremental progress, adding up to something really meaningful, and solving real problems, even if they're boring problems. What are some of the things that's missing in the infrastructure or scaffolding or stack that you guys are personally having to work around, build, or excited to see that's coming out?
I mean, way back in the day, from what I'm told, I wasn't around then, but way back in the 1950s and 60s, when software was first coming into existence, my understanding was that there was this phenomenon called code collapse that took place, where a bunch of big systems, this was before we had structured programming, object-oriented programming, modern software engineering practices, a bunch of big systems kind of collapsed under their own weight, and we couldn't bring them back up. This was before the idea of function calling, and this was back in the days of go-to statements and other things that are, that don't even exist in most modern languages because they were so detrimental to building good systems. And I think, I like the metaphor of AI to software. It's just fuzzy code that we can't introspect in, whose behavior we don't have guarantees for, but it's still code and is going to be integrated into modern software systems as they exist today. I don't think anybody knows what software engineering looks like around AI. I don't think we know how to structure these systems in a modular way and how to think about the logic of one module, connect it to another module, and actually have that logic fit together into one system where we can reason about the input-output properties, the kinds of basic things that allow a programmer to do their job today and allow us to build these massive 100 million line code bases that build on other 100 million line code bases, your browser running on your operating system, running on your firmware, and things actually work, which is somewhat miraculous when you really think about it. If we're going to build, what is it? Intelligence-first design and the reimagination of everything. Sorry, I want to get the title right. If we're going to build a modern AI stack, we need those practices. And it's not that we just need to sit down and have a committee and think about this very deeply. These are going to be hard-won with a lot of mistakes we make. We learned a lot of lessons as a computing culture over the course of the past 70 years. That have brought us to where we are today and allowed us to build good systems. And sometimes we have to relearn those lessons when we have security disasters and systems go down, and sometimes they don't come back up. But with AI, we're going to have to learn many of those the hard way, and we'll figure it out. I don't think some startup's going to come along that will just have the answer, but it's going to take time.
So Johnny, I know you were definitely around when object-oriented programming, we had this thing called design patterns. What are some of the
That was actually a bit before my time. But
all right, sorry to age you that bad.
Yeah, don't age me that badly. But I don't know what those design patterns are today. We have things like RAG. We might look at RAG as go-to statements someday, where, gosh, I can't believe people were doing RAG instead of blank, where blank is something much better. I can't believe they were just letting agents run around and do arbitrary language execution. Why didn't we have better security practices? And I'm sure people back in the 70s or 80s knew that things weren't perfect and knew there was a lot to improve about software engineering. The same way that we know that Rust is better than C++ in a lot of ways. We're still writing C++ for all sorts of reasons. But we're getting there. And I think the same thing is going to be true in AI. It's going to be like a slow incremental climb. We have patterns today that I hope in 2 years we laugh at. And I hope in 20 years you can explain to students like, oh my God, they were doing that? In the same way that we can say this about all sorts of computing practices that took place a few decades ago. We're making up our own cryptography? Who did that? Why would you write your own cipher? What kind of idiot would do that? But we didn't know better. We didn't have the science yet.
So Johnny, for a lot of people in the audience who are building startups or transforming their enterprises, what is one piece of advice that you have, or 2 or 3, whatever?
I think it's along those lines. You have to take whatever the super technical thing is, RAG or whatever it is, and just try to make it approachable by anyone, right? Really, the goal should be to scale up and invoke some kind of cultural change of how people do work, right? It shouldn't be to advance some your own proprietary agenda or anything like that, right? It should be at the end of the day to make as much end impact as possible.
Johnny?
Mind your valuation. Despite what your VC wants you to do, despite what your ego wants you to do, I think a lot of folks have taken a lot of really big valuations that are going to be very painful in the time to come, because it turns out when you have a valuation, you have to live up to it. And that's really scary when you've taken a seed round at 200 million post or more. So, you know, maybe that's good enough for Elon Musk, but for the rest of us, I'd be very nervous. Set your expectations appropriately. Your valuation is the grade that you have to meet in the next round. Make sure it's a grade you can actually meet. And, you know, not to give a hard time to all the VCs here, it's in a VC's best interest for you as a founder to take on infinite amounts of risk. It's great for their portfolio. It's not necessarily always great for you as an individual. So it's worth thinking carefully about the incentives of everyone in the process and trying to make the best decision for you and the people who have taken a risk on you and joined your team.
So Nenshad, I'm going to put you on a spot a little bit. You are older than the design patterns. I know that.
We're really getting into age here.
And
My birth certificate was actually written in COBOL.
yeah, that's right.
At least it wasn't Fortran.
And yeah, you did work on some of the companies that did some boring stuff, like collect data and put it into structured databases. And now we have all the wonderful things you can do in unstructured data.
Yep.
And you could argue that many of those companies are, as you would call them, technically deficient, not quite dead. Is it enough for them to just sprinkle AI, or do they have to actually rebuild things?
So I thought a lot about this question since you first asked it to me, Ganesh. And I read some of the ancient history books of the computing industry to prepare for this. I think I would caution everyone to have a large part of your budget, and I don't just mean financial budget, but even your mental budget, should be on incrementalism. It should be on taking many of the things that we've talked about and say, okay, how can I get incremental gains here? What actually works? What can I put in production, et cetera? And so I do think, for example, for a lot of the business processes that have been automated using ERP software, CRM software, supply chain management, there is value in adding AI capabilities to make it easier to read documents. I mean, in fact, the underlying data structures of SAP were actually documents, right? Not documents the way we think of them now, yeah. But that's how they were built. And so I definitely see value in that, and I think there will be value. But I would say there should be 10 or 20% of your mental budget that looks at completely reinventing things in a way that you never thought before. There's this really cool project at Google that you can look up online. It's on YouTube. It's called Astra, and it's this agent that allows you to have bidirectional conversational interactions where you can ask questions to the agent just like you're asking questions to a human. So you turn on your camera and you point it at the Empire State Building and you say, hey, Astra, what building is that? Oh, it's the Empire State Building. Great. Can you tell me when it was built? Can you tell me more about the surrounding blocks around it? And so if you think of use cases in insurance, I'm going to now have this agent walk around the car with me and assess the damage that happened during an accident. The medical world, I'm going to go into surgery and I'm going to have an agent who's watching with me. He says, hey, watch out. You're really close to the capillaries in this part of the body. Be careful. Like the idea that in some part of your business, you can take a wild leap and do something you never imagined before. I don't want people to lose that. So I would say 80%, yes, do everything that we've talked about in the last 29 minutes. And you will see value from that. I'm positive I see it today, and I know these gentlemen do too. But what I would tell you is leave some budget to pick a part of your business that you've never been able to tackle before, where you could do something really interesting that's never been tried before. And I think you may be able to bring business value to things that literally were not possible even a year ago. And I think it's important for all of us to have a little bit of that dream and that spark to go tackle new things.
Well, thank you all, and go solve some really interesting, boring problems. And I think you'll, in the process, reinvent something. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Change, we break the chain.